computer. And there we go. Welcome, everybody, to Authorsphere. I'm your host, Dan Alatorre, and joining me today is the very talented cover designer, Brett Pflugrath. See, I was worried about messing up your last name. So I messed up Pflugrath. Brett. We'll just go with Brett from now on.
Welcome. Yeah, that works. All right, thanks for having me.
See, you were nervous about making a mistake. I get the mistake out early. All relax.
Yep, all good now. Don't have to worry about it.
Well, it's great to have you on board. Now, for people who don't know, Brett does cover design for books. So these books back here are not his, but each one of these books need to have a cover. And there's some very specific things that need to go into a cover. And for people who don't know, which is basically still me, I still don't know at this point, you got to present artwork for a cover in a certain way. It can't have too much, too little. And this is a skill I simply do not possess, but which apparently you do. So how many book covers have you designed now?
I'm still kind of early in this stage. So I've done about probably 30 at this point.
But you're doing them for some popular authors. You've got a couple of USA Today best-selling authors who pretty much use you. Well, one that doesn't use you exclusively, I understand.
Yeah.
A couple other ones that are probably using you exclusively now. So let's talk a little bit about how did you. All right, so let me back up a step.
Yeah.
Here's where I come at from this, just so you know where I'm coming from. So I started writing books however many years ago, and I would look at books on Amazon. I would say, okay, I'm writing a murder mystery. Michael Connelly's got here. I got one right here. I'll give you 2 great examples right here. Here's a book from Lee Child, okay, and I'd look at that and I'd say, okay, I can find a picture that looks like that and put a font with blood on it. Here's one from Michael Connelly. I'm trying to turn it so it's not too shiny in the light. Pretty plain, right? And both of them, both of these do something I was told never to do. Don't have a guy on the cover. Don't have a gun on the cover. Don't have your name too big. Of course, these guys are allowed to have their names big because
and that's what's selling
their
those
name
books.
helps sells that book, like Stephen King, big Stephen King, little whatever the title of the book is.
Yeah,
so I would look at that and then I'd make something similar that I thought was similar, and I'd send it out, and it would get no notice at all. As soon as I hired a cover designer, or my first step was I bought a pre-made cover. My sales went way up just from that, okay? And it was like an $89 cover. When I hired a cover designer, my sales more than doubled. Now, that means they went from 0 to something for people. and nothing else changed, okay? So then I start having advertising on Facebook and stuff, and I have a newsletter. So I would arrogantly send out a newsletter and say, okay, hundreds of people are going to, at that point, thousands, but only hundreds would reply. Here's one that I'm thinking about buying online, which I wouldn't tell them which was which. So I put out 3. Here's one my cover designer is proposing. Here's one that I'm proposing, that I like, that I picked. And here's one that I just kind of randomly from a website kind of deal, pre-made, whatever. So I didn't actually make the cover, but it was one that from a pre-made that I liked. Okay. Then a pre-made that was like from the genre that I didn't necessarily like, but that apparently whatever. No matter what I sent, as soon as I sent 3 or 5 or whatever it was, all the respondents would always pick the one by the cover designer. The pre-made would get the second most votes, but there was nowhere close. It would be like 80% of the votes would be for the cover designer's cover. The 20 less 1 or 2% for that pre-made one, and almost no one ever chose mine. Whether I made it myself or it was one I picked, mine would almost never get picked. Almost never. Not almost never. It never got picked, and it almost never got any votes.
Yeah.
So I always approach this with, this is a skill I just don't have. I cannot look at book covers. I can't look at these and tell you why they're good or why they're bad. And I can't look at these are my books, and I can't tell you why they're good or why they're bad. In fact, I'll go so far as to say, most of those I would never have picked for my book covers. I don't like how they look. Now, here's how, ironically, whatever ones sell the best, I tend to love a lot all of a sudden. I'm like, oh, well, you'll run up the flagpole and see who salutes. So that's where I'm coming from with this. My favorite phrase is, I suck at covers. If I like it, you need to go 180 degrees the opposite direction. So how did you get into all this?
So yeah, I have to blame that on my wife. So about 10 years ago, my wife started writing, and kind of started out as a hobby, but she was really enjoying it and was really coming up with some great stuff. And so we weren't quite ready to throw a lot of money in it. And I said, well, why don't you let me do a cover for you? So I did my first cover. And I don't really have a background in graphic design. I'm actually a scientist. I'm a biologist and
Wow.
engineer. That's my day job.
On that
And
skill spectrum, those are so far apart, right?
well, yes, but one of the things I've had to do a lot of is I've done a lot of presentations, and so go to conference, got to do a presentation, and one of the biggest challenges is presenting a lot of information, data, and figures, and so that came really natural to me. So I was doing a lot of presentations. I'm still, with other scientists I work with, they're usually, I just got one sent today, a presentation. Hey, can you take a look at this before I do this presentation? Because could
Like a
fix things up.
PowerPoint or something?
Yeah, PowerPoint. Yeah, exactly. And so I was always kind of drawn to that and always did a lot of that. And there's so many overlaps that kind of looking back now, I see, okay, well, with the scientific data, it's such a complex thing that you want to present as clearly and concisely as possible. And so, as soon as you're off or you put too much in there or you're trying to do too much, you just lose people. And the other problem they have is, with a lot of scientific presentations, is a lot of times they're just full of text. And so either people are reading the text or they're listening to you. It's hard to do both. And so it's much easier to listen to someone and look at a picture. And so I would just take out as much text as possible in my presentations. And it was going, really well. And so I even got a couple awards, from the presentations, from the conferences and stuff. And so it just kind of came natural.
That's huge.
And so
I hate when I go to a conference or something, they put a slide up and they start talking, and basically what they're saying is everything on the slide. The next slide is everything they're saying.
yeah,
And I'm like, you could have just emailed me this and I could have saved a couple hours in the hotel room. But what I
right.
try to do, because I hate that style, I think my best presentation was at the Florida Writers Association. I put up one picture and then I just talked. But we were talking about, it was about how to do settings in the story. And so I put a picture of Hogwarts Castle from Harry Potter. And the premise was, how many words do you think J.K. Rowling used to describe this? And it was like 35. But of course, I'm like at 2,000, 3,000, I
Oh
would just
yeah.
go on and on and on. And then, but what she did was she brought in a little bit here and a little bit there. And you gained maybe a couple of hundred words over several chapters. So it was two techniques at work, but you didn't get anything. If I sent you the presentation, it was one slide, so you didn't get anything from there, and it was all me telling it to them. And then of course I think people writing it down are gonna write down what's important to them, and then the notes mean more. So
Yeah, and that's something that I had to do too. Is if I have somebody, hey, can I get your presentation? And so I'd have notes attached so that they know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, it's kind of designed for both the talks and the visual.
So your scientific presentation side started to teach you how to be more visually representative, huh?
Yeah, and making figures for journal articles and everything. Where you got to present that visually
And
in a
that's a
way that is
big
really
leap
easy.
to jump from that to a book cover. So were your first ones, was it trial and error? Were the first ones not successful? And
Yeah, they definitely weren't near as good as I've gotten to now, and I'm still looking to improve and everything. But the first one, yeah, I ran into a few kind of the kind of standard errors, I guess you'd call them. It just kind of and it did okay. Some people still say, oh, I love that one, but it's kind of one of those things like okay, well, this one didn't do so well. And so I think so my wife's first book, so my wife's Audrey, she writes under Audrey J Cole, and her first book was The Recipient, and I think we're on the fourth or fifth version of the cover for that one, and we've had this one now for a few years.
I was going to say the current one has been around for a couple of years. I didn't notice that changing.
No, so that one's been around for 3 or 4 years probably. But she just brought it up again. She's like, oh, I'm not sure. And she she's always wanting to try something new. So, so we've gone through some of her books and changed them a few times. And, and then that's the nice thing about, I guess having a husband that does your
when
book
you
covers,
change
we
it,
can
are you
play with
talking
that.
wholesale changes or just little tweaks? Like just say for this on this one, because this color, again, I'm doing too much advertising for Lee Child here. I could probably feel my own. But this color, it's like a slime green, it's like dark green and slime green and moldy green and Gatorade green. It's really unattractive. It is colors I would never pick. And then
but it
green,
catches your eye.
I wouldn't pick it. But so let's just suppose this was the cover you came up with, or maybe we shouldn't do that. And she wanted to change something. Are you talking, let's go with a whole new picture, let's get rid of this purpley stuff here and make it red, or wholesale changes or minor tweaks? What kind of?
We've done them both. We've done minor tweaks on sometimes. We've done wholesale changes. We've done probably wholesale changes 4 times on that book. And
that one, because that one it's been around the longest.
Yeah, exactly. And that one's
Do you feel like the styles kind of change? Like every year or two, you might need to update it somehow.
Yeah, and I think that is something to be aware of. Audrey, she's watched so many podcasts on all sorts of writing, self-publishing and stuff. And so she's seen other authors that have updated theirs after 5 years and seen boosts in their sales. And I don't know how much of that is people being like, oh, I haven't seen this one yet. And then they buy it and then realize they already read it. That's kind of something you don't want to do to your readers, obviously, but they do tend to see a boost. And so I don't think that's a bad idea to update them. And you can see styles change a little bit. It's fairly gradual, but the colors seem to change more.
Yeah,
there's always a hot color, it seems like, and you can kind of adjust to that. And so that's something that we've been paying attention to a lot more. And one of the kind of things we do is we go, okay, what are the best sellers in this genre right now, and we go through those, and you got to weed out the ones that are kind of on there just for promotion right now on Amazon and everything, and you find the ones that are doing really well. We tend to also give a little bit more weight to the Amazon imprints, because everything they do is probably based on algorithms and everything, so there's just so much information that they use to, I think, develop every aspect of their books that they put out. And so we look at those and figure, if they're probably doing something for a region. So if we see a pattern from some of their stuff, we tend to see, okay, let's see if we can kind of replicate that a little bit. And
that's smart. See, that's something else that my eye doesn't catch it. Now, like you said about Audrey, she does a lot of research. She's into it deep, and maybe I should be. Maybe that's something I'm screwing up on. But if I was to look at, I wouldn't notice the changes, or if I noticed them, I wouldn't be able to tell you why one is better than the other. But I do know that if I try to copy other people, that doesn't necessarily work. So say, for example, again, these guys, Connolly and Lee Child, when you try to look at Audrey's next book, it's going to be a thriller, a mystery. Certain aspects make it, her specific type of book, and then you look at that genre, you're looking for evolving trends or whatever in that genre, so it fits. So as I like to say, you're not trying to sell milk in something that looks like an oil can, because it's not going to be the right thing. So it's looking like what people are expecting to see. But then for me, whatever changed from last year to this year, I'd be oblivious. But I do know that I can't probably make that Michael Connolly book cover. I mean, that doesn't even look very hard to do. I could probably do that. In fact, when I look at it, it looks like crap. They both do.
Yeah.
I have no idea. Maybe that's just.
I honestly think you're right about that one. I wouldn't have gone with something honestly, like that.
This looks like a cut paste job. I mean, look at how terrible that looks.
And
if somebody showed that to me, I'd be like, but here's the thing. I bought those because I think both of those are the starter novels in each of those series. They're both, those books have been around for a while. So it's not fair to say this is selling today. I bought paperbacks online. I didn't look at even what they're used. I think I didn't even look. One's a hardcover. Who knows how long ago that thing was bought? 10 years or more. So maybe that wasn't even popular back then. But so do you look at like the New York Times bestselling authors on Amazon, those number 1, 2 people there? Or do you look at more self-published authors to try to emulate, see where the trend is, what you should be tracking towards?
Yeah, I think the goal of most self-published authors tends to be having their book look and feel like one of the big fives put it out. And either a big five or now Amazon obviously is changing things so much with their
Big
own
six now,
imprints.
yeah.
And so we'll look at those. I still think we probably give more weight to the Amazon imprints because I think they're just using so much more data. They know and information that they're basing their decisions on. And they were obviously doing really well on Amazon. So, and that's, most booksellers, self-publishers, most of their sales are coming from Amazon typically.
Yeah.
And so focusing in on what seems to be working on that platform seems to have worked really well for Audrey. And so, that's kind of what we based on.
Yeah,
And
100%.
yeah. And so, when we look through those, you look for the patterns, you look, okay, there's been trends that have gone in and out, like actually, one of the on yours, the silhouette on the covers, very common. It automatically kind of gives you that mystery, but you're not showing a face. You're still giving the reader a chance to use your descriptions to come up with their idea of the characters. That's something that, like you said, don't put a man on or person on the cover. And the silhouette kind of is a way of breaking that rule.
Don't put a man, because most of the readers are women. They don't necessarily want to see the detective. They probably want to see the victim. This person is in peril. And again, for whatever reason, the psychology is a woman on the cover. You don't show her face, you picture is from behind. And then she's the victim. And that is more, what do you call it? That causes more anxiety or whatever.
Right. Excitement, kind of, that triggers
the woman in
emotions.
danger causes more anxiety than the man in danger. I guess that's right.
For both men and female readers.
Yeah.
And so, exactly. So those are things, and that kind of hits a point. So you want to obviously have a book cover that stirs some kind of emotion, some kind of feeling that you want to basically capture in your story. And so,
see, mine don't do that at all. The ones I pick, images I pick, I love them, and nobody else does. So
yeah, and so we kind of have a little bit of a checklist that when I'm sitting down with Audrey or a client, okay, first of all, nail the genre. Okay, it's got to match what's out there right now, what's selling, what's working, and it's got to be eye catching. So people, either on a bookshelf or scrolling through thumbnails, and that's the other thing. It has to look good as a thumbnail.
Yeah.
Because if you're selling your book on Amazon, you have to be able to look at it as a thumbnail. That's something that has probably changed in the last 10 years, and that carries a lot of weight. And so having it pop as, eye-catching both as a thumbnail and a normal picture or normal size, is really important. And then, you get into the finer details. That's what you want to do. First of all, you want to get them to pick up your book, and then you want them to buy your book. That's the goal of the cover. That's what pretty much any designer would say. And, figuring out those kind of, I guess trends and stuff, is great. But if you can do those things and, or even break some trends sometimes, that tends to catch people's eye. That's, that's a hard kind of thing to follow. Yeah. Okay. I got to be a little bit different. So it looks a little different, but they need to know that, oh yes, this is that genre, different, but not too different.
That's the subtlety that the cover designers have figured out. It's just like if somebody handed me a diamond and I got one of those jeweler's blends loops, I'd be like, I don't know what I'm looking for in here. It looks good to me. But then two jewelers could be like, oh, it's got this and that and the other.
Oh yeah.
Like, okay, help me. Here's take my money. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's something that certainly develops over time. People have a knack for it, but it just kind of, you really got to develop over time, I think. And that's something I'm still trying to develop for myself.
What do you do as far as well, how many different genres do you do covers for?
Well, mostly I've done Audrey's, which have all been kind of thrillers. She just did kind of more of a historical fiction mystery thriller,
right.
Which is the book she just released a couple weeks ago. And but they're all kind of have that same. And so not only I've done obviously for her, but I've done some for her author friends that are also in that same kind of field, and a few other clients. And it, you get people see your covers and they see that, and that's kind of the clientele you're going to attract. So I haven't branched off too much. I have done Dan Brown's another author friend of Audrey's that she did a collaboration on with you and several other authors, and he's done a couple that he's done the thrillers, but he also did one that was more of I think he called it kind of a romance, but it wasn't a thriller. And so that one turned out great. He was extremely happy with it. We found, it was about a guy who, it was about kind of this relationship with him and his dad, I think, a lot too. And they would fly fish together. And so we found this amazing painting that someone did of a fly. And it just, the colors were perfect and everything. And it just turned out great. And so, I've done a couple of genres, but mostly the thrillers.
Well, what would you say a thriller specifically has to? Well, first of all, so in order to do his book, did you have to read the book to figure out what would be the right images, or do you just go on the description, or do you let him tell you a little bit about it, or?
Yeah, we mostly just talk about it. I wish I had time to read everything that came my way, but
And it's kind of like when we do an audiobook, the narrator always comes back to me and it says, what do you want for the sample? Like the 5-minute retail sample. I'm like, you pick it. Because I love all of it. That's why it's in the book. There's probably something that stuck out to you. So you make a few suggestions, and 9 times out of 10, I just take whatever they suggest. When it's up to me, I'm like, well, the first couple of minutes of the book, because I think that's what's going to be the most catching. But in my books, that's usually the killer and the victim, and then the rest of the book's about the detective. So it's kind of misrepresenting a little bit. So on like you said, you wouldn't have the ability necessarily time to read all the books. And even if you did, what you thought was an important scene may or may not be easily represented or the appropriate thing to represent on the cover. So a thriller's got to have, well, I don't know, does a thriller have to have a certain images or image to make a thriller?
It definitely has to have that feel of kind of some kind of suspense.
What tells you that's a thriller? Without you don't see the title, or the title's blurred and the name is blurred, but the image says to you that's a thriller book.
Yes, the image
that tells you that.
Yeah, it has to have kind of that. It doesn't have to be actually dark, but it has to have maybe kind of a darkness feel to it. We've done some white covers but they still have that kind of eeriness almost to it, but not horror, obviously. So
when I held up this Lee Child book, you said dark, and it didn't strike me that way. This is dark, but I think overall there's dark here, dark here, dark here.
Right, but it gives you a dark feeling.
And dark here.
Yeah.
And that was something my guy said. I just grabbed one of these. He said what he liked about this was the dark. I think the dark all the way around, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, I wouldn't have done that, but I don't know what I'm doing. So
yeah, and that's that dark does a few things. It gives it kind of that feeling, but it also helps you have your name there in the top. It helps that pop. It helps those things come out from the background. So you can use those a few different ways. And the other thing is contrast, like the one right behind you, primary target, that your name, that color just pops off that cover. And that seems to be,
I don't like that either. It's like yellow and black. It's a bumblebee. I hate it.
But it's eye-catching. And I wouldn't be surprised if that has a little bit to do with that yellow is drawing.
I'll tell you something else about this. No, in this one, it's a victim, right? In this one, theoretically, that's the detective. That's the main character, okay? One of the things I was told you can't do, I'm going to hold it up so you can see it. She's got a sniper scope on her, right?
Yeah.
The sighting thing there. And I was told you probably won't get that approved because it's obviously a rifle. And that's what this particular killer does. He's a sniper who's killing victims. This is just some poor innocent lady waiting for her bus that he takes out. But I loved that sniper, the crosshairs being on there.
Yeah.
To me, it was like the lady on the bench with the crosshairs on her. To me, it was everybody knows that's a rifle scope about to kill this poor woman, right?
Right.
And you don't think it's the detective, you think it's the victim.
Yeah. And that adds a huge amount of suspense to that automatically. You know, she's not just sitting there contemplating life or what, well, maybe she is, but she's, you know, in danger. and it just stems out of automatic, you know, emotional response to that. And so that's, yeah, that's, I would say that's a very good aspect. If you can trigger that emotional response without pushing people away, because, you know, that's what they say about guns a little bit. You know, some
Yeah.
people have aversion to that, and you don't want to put anything that would have an aversion.
100%. The first book cover
but-
I picked out was very black. I don't have a copy of it around anymore. I got rid of them all. And like you said, after it's this book, right? But this is nothing at all like what it looked like. The first version was a guy with a gun like this,
Mhm.
right? It was almost a black and white cover. There was very little, because it was darkness and dark all around. That was the first one I picked, but you could see his face, good looking guy. And he had the gun right next to his face. And that was what I used. We were doing the marketing way back when, which is where I met Audrey. So for the ebook, they said, hey, you have to have a cover for this thing. And I was like, oh crap, okay. So you know, I just went and grabbed one. I thought, oh, that looks good. It looks like a copy. He's got a gun. Okay, great. And then and we rolled with that for that marketing program thing.
Mhm.
But the feedback was like, you shouldn't be a guy, you shouldn't be showing his face, you shouldn't be showing that gun. So basically everything I picked was wrong. And I had paperbacks made of it. People like them now because it's like the classic, that was the original.
Mhm.
It didn't sell. It didn't sell. So I'm glad you like it, but the one or two people who liked it are not like the 10,000 people who bought it as soon as I changed it to this, you know? This one sold,
Yeah.
the other one didn't. So which one do I like? I like this one a lot.
Yeah. Yep, definitely.
But here again, this is the detective theoretically, and that's like Tampa. She's in the field, and then the clouds, and that's it. This I never in my wildest dreams would have picked this. To be honest with you, I wouldn't pick it today. It sells well, but I don't know if you were looking at it and I gave you a description or we talked, and I would not want to talk because I suck at this. So the more we talk, the more information I give you about what I like, the less it's going to work, because you know what I'm saying? It's like, I have to just maybe give you the book description and whatever you pick from there, bro.
Yeah, well, I definitely would like to hear a bit more than just the book description, but yeah, too much information can be overwhelming. And that's something you see a lot of problems with on covers, is they want to tell the whole story.
Yeah, that's me. That's what I try to do.
And, you know, I kind of fell into that trap on my first one. I was putting a little bit too many elements in there, and yeah, if you put too much on there, it's just overwhelming. And so the more simple you can keep it, with triggering that emotional response, with showing the genre, I think the better.
That's a balancing act, because now you could talk about something that's an inch high, or on a phone, maybe a little less than that.
Right.
Still got to be eye catching. It's still got to give that emotion, and it's this big. And then it's
that's
where look good when it's this big.
Yeah, so that's where the color really comes in. The picture can't be distracting as a thumbnail, but most of the time you're not going to really be able to see the fine details of the picture.
Right.
So the color has to convey that, and that's where I think that yellow on the black has done really well. Audrey's, one of her best-selling books, same thing. It's yellow on a black, mostly black cover, and for some reason,
I would never have thought of that.
Yeah, but it's just the contrast, and you know, yellow on black also kind of triggers, like, you know, caution tape.
Yeah,
you know, there's things that, you know, you relate things to, and so it kind of brings up excitement. You know, yellow's an exciting color, and so it triggers emotions just with those colors. And so the more you can do that, you know, which is a thumbnail, it's just so hard.
Well, then let me ask you this: why wouldn't you have every cover have that dark, let's call it a frame, that kind of framing, and then bright yellow, you know, the bumblebee that I hate, right? And then why wouldn't you do them all that way then?
Well, if you go on Amazon right now, I'd say about 50% of the top sellers have that right now.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Now, is that something? Let's just say that's true, because I'm not going to go check. How long would you say it's been that way, and how long would you think it would continue to be that way?
I think that's probably been only about 2 years that's
2 years.
Maybe 3 or 4.
That's a pretty long time
where
in the ebook
yeah,
industry.
so it's been there for a little while. And yeah, it's just these cycles. Yeah, it's hard telling how long they last for. Maybe
Well, I'm
that
sure
might
some
be a
things
little bit on
cycle
its
through
way out.
faster.
Yeah. The other one that we did on one of Audrey's books was Pink. And that was something we've kind of seen a bit more of too, and more of a light cover. So this cover is very kind of white, pale blues in it, and it's just a forest. It's just the snow-covered trees, and then the title's it's actually the same. The title is actually the background image, but we just outlined the letters and then inverted them, so they're like a darker version of the background. And so that's somewhat subtle, but her name is in pink. And that seemed it's done pretty well. That book's done pretty well also. But that seems to be another kind of trend that we've seen a little bit in the thrillers, is kind of a pink text. And
that's interesting. So when I was looking at mine, it's like one has the red, one has the yellow, one has orange. It's like a roll of lifesavers back there,
Yeah. But all those are warning colors, So
here's the problem. Here's the problem I see with it, right? And again, I'm totally wrong on this. I think when a person's looking for the book, they're not looking at these two books at the same time, saying which one looks better. They're looking at that or that, right? So it almost doesn't matter, I guess. It almost doesn't matter what colors I repeat or don't repeat. I think we changed them every time just so they wouldn't be the same each time. Yeah, that was probably my suggestion. It was probably a bad idea, right? I probably should have left them all yellow and black.
Yeah, but they all stayed in that kind of red to orange theme, red to yellow theme. That once you start to go from red into purple, if you're thinking on the rainbow, the
I probably would have,
everything. Yeah. So if you go on, away from those colors, orange is kind of the middle one. So once you go from yellow, if you start to hate it into green can be all right. Lime green seems to do kind of well. There's quite a bit of that out there. But once you get into more, the bluish and the purpley side of things, then those are cooler colors. They are more calming. So that's why you probably see romance or kind of the feel good, tend to have maybe more of a blue title or something like that. It just feels more airy, more relaxing. But yellow, red, orange, particularly, they bring excitement, danger. That's why, that's just what we've been programmed to, either naturally programmed or we've used that, programmed ourselves through all the warning signs and everything that we have.
It's kind of like you said, there's a checklist. One of the ideas is maybe the right color selection, which now you can kind of have what would you call it, a template almost of, like you say, we can't use certain colors because they don't evoke the right emotion. Is that the right way to say that? So what are the ones
that's got to fit your genre. That's got to fit the emotion you want to present your book as.
Well, a thriller is, what emotion are you going for with a thriller?
You want excitement.
Excitement like fear, or excitement like danger?
Yes.
Same thing, I guess,
if that's what's in your book, yeah, you want that thrill,
there's excitement like
the chase,
my daughter looking forward to Christmas.
Oh, exactly. Yes,
that's excitement.
Yeah,
my birthday's coming up. This is more on the scary end, I guess, right? Not a horror novel,
right?
Fear. Well, you tell me. So what is, if we're gonna divide that spectrum a bit, excitement, fear, anxiety, anxious, concern?
Yeah, thrilling. Also too, that kind of thrill you get from skydiving. You want that kind of emotion, like, oh, this is dangerous, but I'm going to enjoy it.
Potential for death.
Yeah, and so you want to provoke that as much as possible. Obviously, if you're in a different genre, romance is going to tend to be reds and pinks and stuff that trigger passion. Your feel-good stories are going to be probably bright colors, but maybe 10 more blues and those happier colors.
So you have a palette of
brighter
thriller colors. It's like you gotta be thriller, you're gonna be over here, and if you're over here, you're not thriller anymore. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. And so here's the funny thing about colors, though. I'm colorblind.
Are you really? Like totally?
So,
just red green or
red green colorblind? Yep. And so as soon as people hear that, like, wait, how do you do this? And so
I was just about to ask, how do you pick the colors then?
It comes down to math. So I look at, when I'm picking colors, I have to go into the color wheel. and pick it out there and kind of look at where it is relative to other colors. And
wait, back up. So you got a color wheel that says red, blue, green, yellow, different shades of these, purple, light blue.
yeah, and when you're selecting a color on the computer,
for you, and you know, I got to stay within these.
Yeah,
like
so it becomes very mathematical. But the other thing it does is it also helps, because 10% of men are colorblind and like 1% of women or something like that is the rough numbers. And so, fortunately, women tend to be the readers, and so that problem's a little bit less. But if you're writing in the thriller genre, you're still going to have a lot of men that are going to read your books. If you do a cover that is green with red text, you could have just lost 10% of your clients, because they will not see that red text on a green background.
Oh.
And yeah, and that's something that,
So what's it going to be, grayish?
They're just going to look the same. They're both going to tend towards browns or grays depending on the tone.
Oh, wow. So wait, I got one that's like that, right? So this one here. So, wow, now wait a minute. When I held this up, I was talking about green and red.
Yeah.
So this is red over here. You're seeing that
right.
as like gray?
More of a kind of a brown to greenish color. Like they
okay.
And
this is a
how do you explain color to people?
Mucky.
Yeah, and that's got enough yellow in it so that I can see that a bit more.
It's
and
a
so
yellow, green. That's right. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but so you would think then this would be a really bad color choice for the reason you said.
Fortunately, most of the text is white and it's outlined in black, so it's still very readable.
It would work as a black and white cover because.
Right. But if you did, like, if you had your cover, that's another thing that people try to, currently, you don't want to outline your text. It looks very
right.
older book at this point. And we can talk about fonts a little bit. Yeah, and we can talk about the fonts a little bit more, but you have your book with a red title, or your name in red. If you want to hold that up for a second.
Yeah.
So if you had, instead of a dark grayish, I don't know if it's kind of got a blue tinge to it because of the sky, but if you had like a forest background where it's dark green trees, your name would pretty much all but disappear. And if there's 10% of potential men readers and 1% of females, that's not going to do well on a thumbnail. That's not going to, it's really bad on a thumbnail, but it's also not going to do well as regular size. So
now, I'm not sure how important it is to have my name so big. I'll tell you why I put it so big. On the other series, it's not as big. On this one, my name's not as big, right?
Yep.
The reason why is because this was the first one of mine that really started to take off. So I thought my name that size was appropriate because this name doesn't mean anything. You don't know who I am anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, you still don't necessarily, right? But I thought once, again, the marketing thing that I met your wife through, we were able to become, through a big marketing push, I became a USA Today bestselling author. And at that point, I wanted to have it say, which it does on this one, it says it, it's just really fine, USA Today bestselling author. And on this one, it says it a little more clearly because white against black. And I thought, when I look at the people who are New York Times bestselling authors, their name starts to be bigger. So it's almost like it needs to be bigger, even though I don't need it to be bigger. I'd rather the image was bigger, but I think you kind of have to do this. And I don't think Audrey's done that. I don't think to that extent, but it almost needed to be that.
We did do that with her series. So her Emerald City Thriller Emerald City Thriller series. We did that. Her name is quite large on that one, and we did it a little bit smaller on some of her more recent ones, and they've actually been her ones that have really taken off. But this is actually, I had the same conversation with Brown. I just lost his first name. I'm stuck on your name.
I think you said Dan Brown before. It wasn't Dan.
Yeah. No,
I
it
can't
wasn't.
remember. I think it's Bill or something, or Dave. Anyway,
No,
Mr.
Timothy
Brown.
Brown. Timothy Brown.
Timothy Brown.
I got stuck on your name. Yeah.
Well, here's the
So
funny thing. When you said Dan Brown before, and I'm like, that's not the right name, but I don't remember what his right name is. And I'm thinking, it's not Bill, it's not Joe, but it's a short name. It's like Dan.
yeah. Oh
Tim.
gosh. Yeah. Sorry, Tim, if you're watching. So anyway, with him, I had the same conversation, and he's like, "Oh, I don't think I can put my name up," but there's a little bit of fake it till you make it, thing with that, and that's what people are looking for. And if they know, oh, there's so many subconscious things going on that if they see a big name, maybe they think it's a big name.
So I jump over the thriller section. There's a guy who my book, I can't tell you his name off the top of my head, but you look down at the also box or whatever it's called these days. I don't think it's called that anymore. And his cover would be 1/3 New York Times bestselling author, 1/3 his name, and then the title's in there somewhere, and there's hardly any image. And it's almost like, and it's like bright yellow, I think, yellow and black. That New York Times bestselling author part was yellow black. You may know the guy I'm talking about, and if you don't, anybody listening, if you click over to thrillers, you'll see right away who it is, because that's so much of his cover. Now, he's New York Times bestselling author, and he sells well. And you look at the reviews on his book and the ratings on his books, and they're up there. But for me to look at that, I'm like, I don't have the ego to do that. I mean, I guess I do, because if he came to me and said, you got to do this, I'm like, well, I've hit the big time. But I still feel like the image and the title need to do some of the selling as well. And apparently his name sells enough to where, or even less than his name, the New York Times bestselling author. He's really trading on that, I guess.
Yeah.
For people who don't know who he is, when they see that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you're trying to justify selling your book, and so New York Times bestselling author, that carries a lot of weight. If he's becoming a household name, that's going to carry a lot of weight. You
Not
probably buy a book just based on
remember it, right? So
yeah, well, yeah,
but definitely when you start scrolling through the thriller list, top 20, top 30, top 50, whatever, it jumps out at you. You definitely see it. Now,
I think I know which one you're talking about, or if not, I've seen a few more like that.
Well, there's probably more of them out there now because he's been doing it for a while. It just doesn't seem like that would be the right thing to do. And I'm surprised every time I see it, because I'm like, there's nothing, there's no image in there. The name, it's all about New York Times bestselling author in the name, I guess. I don't know. But that goes back to, I don't know. I don't know what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, so that's what they're relying. They're relying on the colors, the font, the name, the New York Times justification, that kind of validation of, hey, this is a good book or a good author. And so, you got to pick what you want to bank on. And, they're able to kind of probably trigger an emotion from the colors and everything, and the font. That's another thing that, besides the colors, the font. So that Lee Child book you have there, it's got really soft corner fonts.
I think
that is
if
not
you look
something...
at the font for his name, that looks to me like a 1970s. It's probably not, but that looks like a 1970s. This one looks like a 1970s font. This is pretty standard today, I would think.
So that's not as bad. But his name, it's a very soft cornered font, and that,
like we said,
not
it's also it's all outlined, right? Now the same book I held up, Connolly, none of it outlined, all block letter.
Right. So I think that text is more representative of what you see now. There's
Definitely
still a little bit of rounded edges on the text, it looks like. And that's something that you see, is that trend is not really very common right now for thrillers. You want kind of a rigid kind of, thing. But that cover, I think, is a lot better than the Lee Child one. It's got a few things going on, but some good contrast with the font. The font seems to be fairly good. And it's well balanced. That Lee Child one, it's also really heavy on the lower part. There's nothing on the top.
Yeah.
There's image, obviously.
To my eye, again, just the wrong way to look at it. I'm like, this makes me look at this, and there's something dangerous about this staircase and that person. And then these words, killing floor, I'm like, it's like in the prison, I think there was a killing floor, right? So this guy is either going there or getting away from it or something. And so
But
it works to
to
me.
me, it feels
alone.
very unbalanced.
Yeah. So the balance part would be, what would you have done to balance it? Put his name up here?
Probably, or something
Move the
like
image
that.
down?
Yeah. And move the image around maybe a little bit. It feels, yeah, it feels, and you can use unbalanced to trigger things. We actually did that with one of Audrey's best ones. We did the title at the bottom off to the side and not centered. And so it kind of has a different element that allowed us to do more with the, cause it's the pilot's daughter. And so, it's kind of funny. So it's the pilot's daughter. So you have a 3-word title, and each word is very different in length.
Right.
And that can cause some issues. And so it's like, okay, do I make them all the same size and everything? And so those are things you got to consider too, which gets
this is my issue right here. A short first name and a long last name.
Yes, that's
It's
also
like,
partial.
I really want them when it's smaller. When I did it smaller, it was easy, right? It fits on one line. I want them on one line, but I sent the guy the example of Stephen King. It's like, Stephen and King are short enough. I'm like, how did you make them short? James Patterson, that's a long name. How do you make them short? Stephen's not short. And he goes, no, it's got to be on 2 lines. I'm like, it takes up too much space on 2 lines. I'd rather have had it 1 line and then a bigger image or a bigger whatever else. And that's, again, but see, I'm a symmetrical kind of guy. If there's 50% on the left, I kind of want 50% on the right.
Yeah, and that's
not
that works though. That you do want it to feel good. If you're doing unbalanced, you have to do it right, and that can be very hard. Most people want things to be kind of even. There's just a natural calming effect, I think. But once you shy away from that, if you do it right, then it triggers an emotional response. It triggers kind of a feeling.
Now, when you went with the pilot's daughter, wasn't each one stacked on top of the other?
They're stacked, but they're off to the side.
Pyramid shape?
Well, it's left justified, so they all line up on the left, and so it kind of forms a little bit of a triangle. And so that was quite a bit different. I saw maybe a couple other covers that had done something similar. Sometimes they'll have them kind of spaced a little bit different, if they got really short words, and you'll see kind of stuff like that playing around with. But for a majority, they're pretty much centered.
I'll tell you what's
so
funny.
that was a little bit of a thing, but we were able to balance it out with the image. The image took up more of the right side of the cover, and they kind of nested into each other, and it seems to work. That's her best-selling book. It's done, amazing. And so
it seems overall to be a relatively, I don't want to say it's a simple cover, but the imagery is, I don't know, is that the right word? Simple, basic? It's like maybe a high contrast? I don't know.
Yeah, so I think that's what we were trying to do. So it is high contrasting. So the image is almost all black and white, and this is about a hijacking. So we got a plane on there, and to trigger that emotion, the plane is pointing straight down. And so that automatically kind of gives you a danger. Something's not right here. This seems kind of scary. And so the crazy thing is too, we did that cover. I had it all set up for her. We're ready to go. She's about ready to kind of put it out there. And the book Falling came out, which got tons of news. This is big, flight attendant wrote it. And we look at their cover, and it was like, oh my gosh, this is almost identical. They had some different colors and everything on, but it still had a plane facing down, and we're just like, oh. And so I ended up reworking it, because at that time we did have the title centered and everything. And so I was like, okay, it can't look like we just directly copied this, even though we didn't. We already had it ready to go, and everything, hadn't even seen their cover. But so then we shifted it. So we shifted it over to the side a little bit, did the title to the side, and we had different colors already, so that wasn't an issue. But I think that almost helped, because we had to get a little more creative. How can we make this different without?
It's got to make you feel good that the idea you came up with, somebody else who's paying publicists and art designers and editors for like one of the big fives, comes out with your exact idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're doing something right here, right?
Yeah, there's with a book about planes and stuff, there's only so much you can do. So But yeah, it definitely did make you feel a little bit better when you see that.
Yeah, it's like, wow, that's awesome. And I know I have to change mine because they came out first, but pat on the back, we obviously were on the right track there.
Yeah, and we didn't change it too much. We kept the same image and everything, and it's still very similar to theirs, but
Similar, but different author names, different titles,
oh
different
yeah,
plot line.
yeah,
Now you're down to different colors. Now you're just down to one image. Yeah,
yeah,
that part's okay. Maybe there was a little crossover appeal there. Maybe you got an extra 10% in sales from that. So the other 90% you still have to earn.
yeah. And
What?
they even came out within like a week of each other. I think Audrey moved her date up. So she put her pre-order up and everything and had hers coming out, I think, the week before. And I think she even had a screenshot of the Amazon chart with hers like one above above that other one, just like, hey, we did it, self-publishing, and obviously going up against one of the big fives. And
Yeah, it's a smart move. That's a smart move. I like that. What so when you talk about you talked about something about drawing your eye across the page, across the cover. What is it that does that? And why is that important?
yeah, I mean, you obviously want to hone in on certain features. So, back to the pilot's daughter, that plane was the first thing you want your eyes to see. And that yellow text was also very drawing. So, if you're going through the thumbnail, you might see the yellow text first and then go right to the plane. And each one of those kind of has to trigger that feeling of the book. And, I think that cover did a really good job of that. Is, that yellow kind of showing danger, really high contrasting against the dark background, and then having that plane facing down. They both kind of trigger that. And so I don't know if it matters which one you progress to, if you start at the plane and went the other way. But either way, it kind of, I see something. Oh, I see something else. If you have something else for them to kind of see without being overwhelming, I think that helps.
It's probably something you can't ask a layman or a reader because they don't know. Like if you ask me, what did you see first when your eyes moving around too fast? But if you took 10 artists, they would all probably be able to tell you, oh, your eye sees this, then this, then this. And they would all probably 80% agree, right?
Yeah.
That kind of feedback is just, you have to know it, but the audience is never going to know that stuff.
Yeah. So I just recently did a cover for Jenifer Ruff. And so I did a couple variations for her, and she's like, oh, I like them all. And so she's like, I'm going to ask my, some of my followers. And so she sent it to followers, and then she sent it to an author friend, another book designer. And she's like, I couldn't believe the results. All the readers were drawn to this one, but the artists and they thought this one was better. And she's like, I don't know what to do now.
Go with what the readers like.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think I gotta go with that though. And it was just a subtle little difference on how we kind of faded the text in the background and did like a reflection type thing. But yeah, and so sometimes the artists get too focused on design and the artistic,
what appeals to an artist, it's like what appeals to the comedians. What if you ask 10 comedians who their favorite comedian is, it's probably not the most popular comedian in the world. It's more some obscure person, because that's going to the next level. But there's a avant-garde aspect to it where it's like maybe in 2 years, what those artists were talking about is what everybody's doing, right?
Yeah.
Work its way through the system. But my default position was always, because I figured out very early on, and if I have the ability to ask a bunch of people, why wouldn't I? Not because each person's going to give me a different answer and I'll sit here confused, but because 80% of them are going to point me in a certain direction. And I figure, well, if I ask 300 people and 80% of them tell me this is the way to go, that's better than what I knew before I asked them.
Yeah, and so especially if you can target. Yeah, especially if you can target readers that, who's going to pick up that book,
well, back then I could
having that mailing list to say, hey, sneak peek at, and a lot of your followers are like, oh, cool, I get to kind of participate in this, a little bit. And so it draws them in even more. And so, that's something that Audrey's done a couple of times, like, oh, I got a couple covers here. What do you guys like best? And yeah, so.
Well, the other problem I have is, this is true of titles and character names and everything else. Once you are used to seeing that image associated with, like when you're writing it, if you're picking, like, say you're going to write it over 2 months, The book's going to take 2 months to write. Then you get to edit and all the other stuff. If you kind of picked out an image, or you had an idea, or not you, me, if I have an image in my head, like I'm writing one about a death that takes place at a grade school. Grade school girl gets murdered, or murdered or suicide. We don't know, right? It's going to be a murder, because otherwise we don't need the. But I thought the image I had in my head. You'll love this. Here you go. Ready? Here's 10 things I'm going to tell you, and all 10 of them are wrong. So in my head, it's this series, okay? So this part's the same. This is the template. We're going to do this. This is going to be the same.
Yep.
So I only get to work with this right here, and we're going to have all the clouds. So what it's going to be is fried grassy like this. This is going to be a lake. Back here is going to be a school building, because it takes place in the school. There's going to be trees here and here, right? Because and then the dead kid is like in like a uniform. She's a 7th grader or a 6th grader. My original thought was the dead kid face down in the lake would be the image, right? And of course, you can't do like 90% of those things. You can't have a dead kid. You can't do that.
Yeah.
So I said that idea. I said, my cover designer always asked me, I'm like, this is wrong. Just like I told you, this is wrong. This is what's in my head, okay? So the sooner he gets me the right image, the one that's more workable, that can be in my head. Because the longer I go along with that bad idea, the more it has to be that, or I'm not going to like it. But I'm smart enough to know if I took my horrible image, even if I paid him to make it, right? Please make me my horrible image. It'll look beautiful. And I took whatever he came up with, which is like, I think he said was a broken cell phone in the grass. That was like his idea. And mine is all this other complicated crap. He's like, first of all, it's too much stuff, and everything you're going to say, right? If I took those two and I grabbed another one off of a pre-made site and I sent it out to my newsletter people, all of them are going to like his. 20% are going to like the pre-made one, and 1 or 2 are going to be like, this one's kind of interesting. I'm like, I know. Then I would pick all the wrong colors. And so his idea was, I think he called it an object. Can we focus on an object? I'm like, yeah, the school building and the dead body and the trees. Pick one. I'm like, what am I supposed to pick? I thought, he said, what about a shoe? What about like a shoe in the grass? Obviously something's wrong there, right? I remember if you said cell phone or broken cell phone, but the image of a cell phone automatically, this is what a cell phone looks like today. So at some point, it doesn't look like this anymore. And it dates the now school building. Well, they don't build those, change them every year. So more classic looking theirs, maybe 50 years ago, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, right? It's got columns and stuff that maybe that's 100-year-old school building. So and then it was called the title was 5 Sparrows, because it's a clique, a little social group at the school. So that ties in, doesn't mean anything, right? But I have no idea what colors he'll do. But this is the one where it's like, this first one was red, and the next one was yellow, and the next one was orange. I don't know. Do we just go back? Do we just stick with yellow and orange? Repeat yellow and orange? I don't know. That's
different. You could do a different tone or different shade or something.
Yeah, I don't know. That's but it's funny, that conversation. So I can see your facial expressions. I'm saying, is this. You're like, yeah, you're being polite. You're smiling. It's like he's going down such a wrong trail there.
Yeah, but the cell phone thing is interesting. So there's going to be aspects.
You latched onto that. You were like, yeah, I like that idea.
But you're right about how it can date things, and so that could be a good thing if you want to set the scene. Audrey did a historical fiction, and so we have a girl on the cover facing away, and she's got an older looking kind of dress or outfit on, and then we have an old plane in the background flying. So those are all things that set the timepiece. Set the time. That's for the
historic fiction, right?
Right, and so, but we also didn't want to
automatically. Did you do a different font for that too?
Not really, because we wanted to keep we wanted it to have the feel of a modern day thriller, because that's how she wrote it. It's not really like a historical fiction. The plane
tells you this is whatever era, but the font says this is a current book. Yeah, I think you.
Yes, and that's what we were trying to do with that, and and that's kind of hard because we want it to feel like, okay, this feels like this. So we're kind of trying to appeal to both kind of readers, and
And didn't she say something in the subtitle? Is there a subtitle on that one?
No. So I think on the back she says it's a historical suspense thriller set in
Historical
World War
comes
II
up
Seattle.
real quick. Maybe it's in the first line of the description,
Yeah.
because or actually, so I get a newsletter. I might have seen it there, but just in case you didn't know, she gives you that information right away. So if
Yes.
that's not your cup
Yep.
of tea, you're moving on.
Yeah. And so and she wants to appeal to both thriller readers that want to read that kind of high active stuff that she suspense and really fast paced book that she writes. That's what she writes. And so the only thing different really is this is just set in Seattle in 1942. And she brings in a lot of sort of historical elements to that, obviously, because that's where it's the setting. But that's more of a setting, not the theme.
Yeah.
Is kind of what she was going for, and she'll probably tell me like, no, that's not exactly right, but
Those things
that's
are
how I
cool
took
for us
it, and
because
that's how.
we get to research our little passion project things, like oh, they used this kind of typewriter back then, and they wore this kind of clothing, and so you learn a lot, and you get the little places where you can emphasize. Don't forget, hey, he's clacking away on a typewriter here. Pushes the carriage return back, and it goes clunk and bing and all that. At the end, it dings when you get to the end. You just got to change a ribbon. Remember those old ribbons that you they were like reels or whatever they were. I say remember. I don't know if you're old enough to remember.
I do remember that barely when I was a kid, and oh gosh, they were messy too. I think I remember playing around with
heavy.
them.
Yeah, they weighed a lot.
Oh yeah.
So when I was in school, when I was a little kid in school, that was the kind of stuff. Someone had it. I guess maybe the secretary, the receptionist, and if you played around with her, I had older brothers and sisters. We must have had one at home. For some reason, I don't know why, or maybe my dad had one at his office, I'm sure. But at some point, you're figuring out changing the reel, and it was like red and black or something, and craziness, and just how heavy and how hard you had to hit those things. Everybody probably who was a secretary in the 50s probably ended up with arthritis.
Oh yeah, gosh.
But that's all the fun stuff you get to bring in as an author. But you got to be careful how much you paint in, because a little goes a long way. And at some point, nobody really cares, how much of that you're talking about going overdoing.
But that's well, a lot of your books, if not all of them, take place in Tampa, right? Where you're from?
Yeah, they're basically all based in Tampa. My detectives went to Georgia one time, and in the Gamma sequence, this guy, he's based in Tampa, but it's a medical thriller. His chasing down of the corporation elements take him all over the world. So he goes to a bunch of different countries, but he's basically home base is Tampa.
That's what
Audrey's are all Seattle.
Yeah, Seattle. And then she has one where it ends up going to Australia. We lived in Australia for a few years, and so having that, being able to describe those areas, having that experience. But she also has one that starts in Seattle, ends up in Alaska, and so she scheduled a trip. She went to Alaska, and so she could experience this, go to the little tiny town that it takes place in, and spend a few nights there. Go to the local bar and see things, and and get that inspiration that she needed to work things in, and be out in the snow when it's -16. And
well, you guys get snow in Seattle, but is it humid? And
well, we actually live in the desert. We're on the other side of the mountains, and so we're in that rain shadow, and so we live about 3 hours from Seattle. We went to college in Seattle. That's where we met and everything, and she grew up on that side. But we ended up, when we got married, we moved over across the mountains into the basically Eastern Washington, the dry side of the state. So, but we do get snow. We've had some snow this year already, but it's just not quite like Alaska.
It's different for a lot of different reasons. We went to where'd we go? Not Denver, but Colorado Springs a couple years ago, right? And we're snowmobiling and doing all that kind of stuff, and that's a desert. It's a desert, but it gets snow in the winter, right?
Yeah.
So it's very dry. Now in Florida, we have lots of humidity, so we walk around. We don't really worry too much about moisturizer. Out there, you're not putting on moisturizer every day. Your skin is falling off in chunks. Especially if you live here and go there, you're like, my eyes are dry, my nose is dry, everything's dry. We went to Utah. The first day we were there. It was very dry, low temperatures, like 33 degrees the whole time we were there, plus or minus five degrees.
Yeah.
So you get used to that pretty quick. She's wearing sweaters and you're inside where there's heaters and stuff, and it's dry. You notice the dryness, but the snow that fell the first day was a real powdery kind of snow. The next day, I'm from Ohio, the Miami Valley near the river, near Cincinnati. So I'm used to the big wet flakes that stick. Yeah. So the next day it did that. The humidity was way different between the 2 days. And I'm walking around second day, I'm like, I'm in heaven. This is the snow. It's terrible to drive on. It turns all the roads to ice. Everyone dies. They have snow rule because they know what they're doing out there. But the powdery stuff, the skiers like that, you can't make a snowman with it, right? The wet stuff, I'm like, ooh, snowball fight, let's go. So, but between those 2 days, as a character, as an author looking at what would a character experience, I had some of my characters go to Colorado, and I had the detective was based in Tampa, and I had her eyes get dry, and she had to put on all the stuff, and her nose started to get little nosebleeds and things from being so dry. So then when I have a character from there come here, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like a steam shower. It's like you're walking into somebody's bathroom when they're taking a shower. So I like to put a little of that in, but like I said, a little goes a long way. But I like Audrey's approach of she had the location for the story, so she went there to explore it. Is that the time?
Yeah, so we've done that a few times now. She did that for the Alaska one. Obviously, we lived in Australia, so we had that experience. I'm trying to think of the historical fiction one. There's a very wealthy family in there, and they have a place on Orcas Island, which is one of the San Juan Islands in Puget Sound. And so, even we've been, my family, I grew up having, cabin on Whidbey Island that my grandpa bought back like in the 40s or something like that. And so, Audrey had been there a few times, and that's, another island in Puget Sound, but a little bit different. And she wanted to go experience Orcas Island. And there was this really old, it was an estate that's there that is now, you can go stay there. And cool. They turned it into a hotel. And so they still had a lot of old stuff. They had a typewriter even, and this place is amazing. And so she based her book there, that wealthy family basically has that, estate that they go to. And so she based it all on that. And so we went and stayed there. They have you can go eat dinner there. And so we ate dinner there a couple of times and just experienced it. And so that, living that experience just kind of makes it so much easier to write, especially, if you're going there for the first time. You're taking your readers there for the first time, most likely also. And so the things that hey, I noticed this, that's those little nuggets you can kind of help bring in. And so I get to tag along for all these things too. And, maybe eventually it helps, for the cover or something here and there, but most of all, it's just fun. And I get to take pictures and stuff.
Right. The pictures, but the experience, like it's going to smell a little different. You're walking on a 100-year-old rug. It feels a little different when you shut a door. It's not a hollow panel door, which is what we tend to make here in Florida. It's, part of it's wood, but a lot of it's not wood. I'm looking at the door, what I'm saying. But it's actually made from wood, and the floors are wood, and they creak when you walk on them. And they've had 100 years of losing their moisture, so the door latches kind of loosely or whatever, and the hinges creak. The windows are not smooth, straight glass, or a little ripply because they've been 100 years around, whatever. A lot of little things that, again, you just find a little place to slip in here, there, and it that aura to a reader. Half the readers or 2/3 of them, they blow right through it, not even notice it. But overall, it gives you that feel, the authenticity, which is awesome. One of the great things about our books.
Well, it's funny too, because I think look at things very different, Audrey and I, and maybe it's kind of my engineering background that I have, that kind of, I look for different things, or see different things, and than she sees. And so every once in a while, maybe I'll bring something that she wouldn't have seen, and like, and then she'll see it, or something like that. And so that always is kind of interesting too, just having different perspectives that I'm trying to justify me going with her on all these fun trips or something. But
well, it's like I always said, hey, worst case, you get to go to a place, write it off, business expense and all that.
Exactly.
But, so we were actually, because she was on the podcast not that long ago, named Jenifer. And Jenifer kind of likes to do the same thing. she picks now, but there was I'm trying to remember. I think they did it the opposite. Audrey was like, I'm going to set a story here, so I got to go there. And I think Jenifer was more like, I'm going to go to this place and I'll figure out a way to make a story out of it, which is similar but not the same, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I said, I write, I got my people going to Indonesia. I have no interest in going to Indonesia ever. I'll Google it. Oh, the temperature is usually this. Okay, it's hot and humid like Florida. Got it. I know how to describe that. So their approach was very different, and I should adopt that approach. I'm like, I should try to think of a story, a reason to have my story in Hawaii, so I can go to Hawaii and write off a Hawaii.
Yeah, there you go.
Totally working backward. I keep writing about Ukraine, and in the Gamma sequence, he goes to Ukraine. He did go to France, so there's that.
Yeah, that would be too
bad. I sent that character goes to places I would never want to go to, but the reason he has to go there is because that's where the corporation's set. They would have the fewest human rights limitations to exploit all the people they need to exploit and stuff. So that's why they he put him in.
So Timothy Brown, the other author that I've done a lot of covers for, he was he's a doctor, he's a surgeon, I think orthopedic surgeon, and he was on the Mercy ship. So they would go around all over the place, all over the world, and helping people. And so some of the stories that you hear from him are just amazing, and he works a lot of that into his books. And he has one that has a North Korea theme to it, and he's been to North Korea, and so he is able to bring in such amazing life experiences into his book too, and so it really just helps kind of bring you into the book as a reader too.
Now she's been doing a lot of stuff on TikTok lately. Do you help her with any of that stuff?
Yeah, I've been helping her a bit with that. Helping her with some imagery. I do a lot of help with her with Facebook ads and stuff like that too. She'll have hey, I need an image for this that looks kind of like this, and sometimes she'll find stock images, or she'll say keep looking for some stock images. And she's taken off pretty good with TikTok. A lot of times, she's a little less technical than me, and so there's a lot of times I'm showing her how to do a few things, but she's done really well with TikTok. That she seems to kind of done a bit more with that. So
I cannot tell you how good her TikTok stuff is. When I first started seeing it was shortly after she started doing it, and I was like, what you're putting out, content she was putting out on TikTok, I'm like, this is what an author should put on TikTok. 100%, you're nailing it. Jenifer's pretty good too, but Jenifer's style is a little different. But I was like, I need to just stop what I'm doing and start copying what you're doing. Like I was basically telling her, everything you do 3 days later, you're going to see me doing it because you're 100% on the right course with that. And I don't know if she did a lot of research or that's just her natural way to approach things, but she was not sure about how well it was going to do. I'm like, this is going to do very well.
Yeah, and it's funny too. Like there's definitely a learning curve. It's like you put up a post and think, okay, well, I just need to get content up there today. It doesn't need to be go viral or anything like that. And sometimes those do well, or she'll put up another post and think, oh, this is going to be great. It's like it's just figuring out the weird mechanics of TikTok and figuring out what people actually watch. And there's all sorts of weird tricks and stuff that she's looked into and stuff. But a lot of it she does. Mark Dawson's course, she's relied heavily on that, for her self-publishing, and they had a course on social media and TikTok. They've added that recently.
TikTok,
and so she went into that, and then she tends to find something there, and then goes off on and does more research beyond that, obviously, and tailors it to what she needs. And
I bought the Dawson course. I did the Facebook ads for authors, a couple of other things. I always feel like I learned enough to do it badly. I probably need to go through it again and learn how to actually do it well.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't take their TikTok one, but I think Jenifer and Audrey both did. And what they're doing on TikTok is much better for an author. So it obviously was something that was working for them, something they paid attention to that's paying off. So let me ask you, if a new author or a new to you is coming to you, what are the kind of things you're going to talk to them about to figure out what should be on their cover?
Basically everything we've really already talked about. I want to know, obviously the storyline, but I want to know, okay, the genre, what are you trying, the readers that you're after, and usually I'll ask, okay, pick some other books that you like in this genre, that you like the cover of, and you got to take that with a grain of salt because,
Because if I pick them, they're the wrong ones.
Yeah, well, and some people aren't willing to admit that. So you're
Well, it would be obvious to you as soon as I send it. You're like, yeah, this guy didn't know what he's talking about.
but so what I would try to do is like, okay, there's something that they like in this. They might not know what it is. What can I see in this, cover that is good? There's got to be something in there that I like that that you could work with. And so trying to capture that and work with them that way. But basically, yeah, okay. Figuring out that genre, we'll talk a little bit about colors. A lot of times, maybe if it's in a series, I've worked with Jenifer Ruff on a series. She'd already had a couple books out, and so there was a template that I had to follow. So I had to find those fonts and get everything to match. And so a theme like you have hers are actually kind of have a lot of similar themes. There's a silhouette of a female on the front. And usually it's a herd detective, but they look like there's kind of some kind of peril or something like that, and so yeah, you work kind of on that, and a lot of times you have to work to simplify it, and that's kind of what you hit, and you want to keep it simple, and and so you want to make sure that they feel like they're given enough input, but also not make it overwhelming. So getting
does it need to be simple because the image is going to be so small and you don't have a lot of, you just can't clutter it up, or why does it need to be simple?
Well, how long do you look at a cover before you decide you're going to pick it up?
Fraction of a second, right?
Exactly. So if it's overcomplicated, it's too much for your brain to take it. And so
they're just going to keep going, right? They're going to move on.
Yeah. And so if it's too much, it's not worth my time. Because I only have a split second to give this, depending on who you are, like Lee Child, put Lee Child's big up there, that's going to sell your book. And so if you can pick that off immediately, what do you need in your stage, wherever you're at in your writing career, to sell the book, and that's going to differ. And so maybe it needs to be the imagery, so they get that emotional response from the imagery immediately, or it's the colors, basically something needs to trigger that immediately, like, oh, I need to look at this a little bit more. And you can work little nuggets in there into the cover. Maybe there is something in the background, or there's something very subtle that once they're looking at it, they're like, oh, hey, there's something else going on here too, and they can dig deeper, but that can't be overwhelming. It has to be very subtle and hidden, if there at all. But basically, yeah, the goal of your book cover is to grab that attention so that they stop and look at it, and then hopefully read the blurb and then buy it. And that's pretty much what any designer would, and any author would probably say. And so yeah, and if it's overwhelming, we live in a swipe and go society now. We don't, we make decisions in split seconds, and it's the same with books. And the other thing is, if it's very complicated, that thumbnail, it's just going to be so much harder to see in a thumbnail.
The bottom line is, it's a lot of pressure on the image, but that image is really the thumbnail. You're really designing a thumbnail, would you say? And then if it also looks nice once you click on it, good, because I got you halfway to where you need to go.
Yeah, you don't want them to click and be like, oh, this is what I was thinking, and leave immediately. Especially if you're doing like Facebook ads, because then you're getting charged for that. So it has to look good as, if you have a thumbnail on the Facebook ad, or if you're just talking even ads, which is, very similar to a cover, each one of those is going to have to kind of capture the same things and get them to click. But you don't want them to click on it and then end up and and be like, no, this wasn't what I was expecting, and leave, because you're losing money and you're not selling books.
Yeah, you paid for that click whether or not they bought it.
Yeah. So yes, the thumbnail is so much more important these days. And that getting it to look good as a thumbnail and good, that is definitely the goal. As soon as they look at the full size.
How important is the title? Is it important at all? I mean, it's not unimportant, but
right,
maybe 20 words long. But after that,
well,
it almost, I'm not sure it matters too much, does it?
Not really. I mean, you can make it overwhelming. Like Stephen King, that's a great title. It provokes emotion. It's so simple. You're just like, wait, what is this? It get your curiosity. And so the titles, there's definitely an importance there. If it's so long, that makes it so hard for design. We talked about the pilot starter. That was actually kind of hard because it was a small word, a medium word, and a big word. And so spacing and trying to make that fit, that causes challenges. I've found, so her next book that she's working on right now, we've just finished the cover for that. It's called The One. And that just makes it so much nicer to work with.
The words same like.
Yeah, and we did a couple of versions of that. We ended up making the a lot smaller, one very big.
That's what I would have said.
Yeah,
but the is not important at all.
Exactly, and so, but her other one, The Recipient, that was a lot harder because Recipient is so much larger than the. It felt a little bit less balanced, and so that's something you want a title that fits the book, obviously, but those are some things that you might even want to consider. Obviously, designers can work with whatever they got, but a 20-word title.
If you're going with brevity and simplicity, you can't just go with recipient. That word by itself is a little awkward. It kind of doesn't make sense. The recipient makes a lot more sense, even though the word the is pretty much not necessary 99% of the time on a cover, right? But the one, you can't just have it be one, it's got to be the one, so it makes that little word much more important.
Oh yeah, but it's also somewhat
a gamma sequence. I'm not sure the is important at all, and over here it could have been the primary target, not necessary. Primary made more sense.
But at least you can shrink that one down because it's just kind of that little filler word that may have some importance, may not, but
So who are you allowed to give names of some of the people you've designed for?
Yeah, I think I've given you most of them probably already. I've had a few other clients.
You mentioned you've done some stuff for Jenifer Ruff. You've done some
Jenifer
stuff
Ruff
for Audrey J Cole, Timothy Brown. I know all those people.
And that's kind of what has led to it. I did covers. I think obviously Audrey's developed her relationships with those authors also, and they it started with Tim. Tim was asking Audrey how do you do these things, and I think he had a couple covers out there, and he even said I don't think they're doing very well. I noticed your covers were doing really good, and we just said, hey, why don't we just help you out?
Well, I asked her a long time ago who did her covers because I was looking, like I told you, I was buying some pre-made stuff, and Jenifer was using whoever she was using. I think his name is I know what his name is, but it's Timothy as well. Or it's Tim as well. And so I was just asking a bunch of my author friends, hey, who do you know? What do they cost? Do you think they do a good job? Obviously, if they think they do a good job, they wouldn't be using them. But if I thought somebody was doing a good job, I'm like, they do a good job, but I really like this other person, so I'm trying to get in with that cover designer. It's like, oh, that's important to know that, right? So I went to Audrey. She was just very, oh yeah, my husband does these for me. I'm like, really? I said, well, he does a great job. She's like, yeah, he's got a real knack for it, and blah, blah, blah. I was like, man, that must be nice. Or maybe it's not nice, if you're like, oh, it should be a tree. And she's like, no, it should be a doghouse.
Oh, we've had a few of those, but and she does really good with the genres. She's a reader. She knows what she picks up. She reads in her genre, and so she brings a lot of that element into it. And I run every cover I do by her. Like, what do you think about this? And she's always has great input. And
she's a good eye for it. Jenifer does too, I think. Now, me, I admit I don't. Right? Because when we look at these covers, I'm like, it doesn't really do anything for me, but okay,
Yeah, but do you read in the genre? I mean, you have Lee Child there, obviously. So
yeah, yes and no. Well, again, and this is an older book, and it's the style in which it's a Jack Reacher book. So the style in which that's written is very, to read it, I think to have narrated it or seen it as a movie is, and he was a TV writer, I think, before he started doing films. To me, it reads that way. It's very choppy, very like 3-word sentences that shouldn't be 3 words. Like I would never write that way. But whenever I put out a book with my beta readers, when they're done reading it, I'm like, so you've read my book. Who of your favorite authors does it compare to? and I get a lot of Michael Connolly and a couple other people. I don't really get Lee Child, but I just thought, I read an interview or I listened to a podcast where he was getting interviewed, and I thought, I really should read his book, because I saw one of the movies and I was like, I don't know what he would have written to make that. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's like when you're seeing the movie, you're not reading the book.
Yeah.
It's like I wonder. I enjoyed the movie enough, but I'm like, that's not a story I would have written. But I wonder what the story was, where this came from, right? So I thought, I'll do that. And he's real popular, and I was like, why is he so popular? What was in that first book that made it so good? And I'll answer my own question. I don't like the writing style, asterisk. He is writing as if he's Reacher. So it's Reacher telling you stuff. And that's how Reacher is. So you get that, but it's annoying for me as a reader and an author. What I think the real appeal, and this is just me, my 2 cents, was Reacher's real smart, and it's like he's deducing, like Sherlock Holmes used to. Well, obviously these books are missing because there's dust there, so we know, right? They were moved within the last hour because the mail came on Tuesday, right? He does a lot of that stuff, which I call solving little mini mysteries. Yeah, the reader is like, "Oh, that was smart. I didn't think of that." Or how did you know? He's talking to this cop. He's like, "Well, you obviously got divorced recently, blah blah blah." And he's, "Well, how do you know?" "Well, because you moved from Boston, and then I guessed at a couple of these things." So it's like, to me, it's like you're reading a mystery because you want to solve the mystery. So to put little mysteries in there to solve is really smart and fun. And I was like, it comes off as smart, but I think for the reader, now the reader's engaged on 2 levels. I'm solving this big mystery and I'm piecing these little things together. But the guy I'm doing it with, Reacher, is pretty smart. And so he's going to point me in the direction I need to be pointed. Can I figure it out? Something like that. That's maybe the appeal of that. I haven't started the comedy book yet. So I would say I'm a fan of the genre. I don't read anywhere near as much as Audrey does. Jenifer, I think, reads a book every 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
I don't do that, right? And so I started getting audiobooks because I thought that'll help me get through, like it's a task. But see, it is a task. I write for enjoyment. I don't necessarily read for enjoyment, and then part of it is I do these authors clubs. So I have 50 books written by grade school children that I have to publish before end of March. So I read a lot. And I used to do a lot of critiques. So I read I did thousands of critiques and critique partners rather. So I had to read people's books. So I read thousands of other authors. So it's not when I'm like Jenifer reads for pleasure.
Yeah.
I write for pleasure. I will watch movies and TVs and listen to podcasts for pleasure, but I'm kind of working my ideas the whole time. So I'm always thinking about my next story. And I don't think I'm a very fast reader. So when I pick up a book, I could probably get through it over the weekend, but I usually don't. So on the Lee Child book, I read half of it on the plane right out to Utah for our vacation. And that's where we are. I haven't picked it up since we got back. I've been back almost a week. It's just not a priority. But it was research. I got what I wanted to know. The writing style. Why is it popular? What do people like about it? I don't need to finish the book to know that. I figured that part out. So now the impetus to finish it is much less. And I feel a little guilty that I haven't finished it, but I probably won't finish it. I started listening to the Connolly book as an audiobook. Because I go out and I exercise, and you can't hold a book while you're jogging, right? Or at least I can't. And listening to that, I was like, same kind of thing. The deadpan delivery. I don't like this narrator. I don't think the pace is fast enough for me. But it's not. He didn't write it today. He didn't write it for me to read it today. He wrote it when he wrote it back then, a number of years ago. So I'm like, okay, I'm a really impatient reader too. It's like you gotta get to it. I like Jenifer's stuff. I like Audrey's stuff because they bring it. And that's how I write. I'm an impatient reader, so I'm an impatient writer. I try to get my stuff up and running. The phrase I hear so often is, there's no extra words in Dan's books. I'm like, he just gets right to it, no descriptions, no, none of that stuff. So anyway, I kind of took over our conversation there. You asked, do I read in the genre? So it's yes and no. Basically, no, I don't read the genre that much. I'm a fan of the genre. I'll watch all kinds of murder mystery movies, especially old ones, the noir and all
Yeah.
that.
Oh yeah.
But this year's New Year's resolution was I need to read more in the genre. Last year I read like 3 of the old Ian Fleming James Bond books
Oh yeah.
and a bunch of maybe 3 of Bill O'Reilly's historical. They're like mysteries, basically.
Oh yeah.
You know, like killing Jesus, killing Lincoln, killing
Yeah.
whatever they all were. I've read a bunch of them, and I got them right here somewhere. I can tell you what they all are. So it's like yes and no. But I feel like to do better in the genre, I should probably read more of the genre, especially the popular authors. So I'm trying to lend myself and my time to that. If you work out, you got your ears can be getting a book. So that's what I'm trying to do there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, the reason I ask is because I'm a vacation reader. So basically, if I don't read other than on vacation for the most part. And part of that is, you know, with my job, I have to read a lot of scientific journal type stuff. And that is, you know, hard reading. And then I'm not going to feel like reading after that. So I rely on Audrey a lot for that. And so, because she reads for pleasure. She's doing a lot more for business now too, obviously. But I'll, you know, so I'll ask her, okay, why did you pick that book? You know, what drew you to this? And, you know, a lot of times she'll go through and show me the similars and you know, I'll ask, okay, what element brought you to this one and stuff like that. Because not being a, you know, avid reader from that genre, I have to rely on her with that a bit more.
Well, when you read for pleasure, what do you read?
I'm more kind of sci-fi, maybe. The book that I'm halfway through that's sitting on my shelf right now is actually 1984.
Really?
And so I went back and read that, but I've read like some of the older kind of stuff like Ian Fleming. I've read some of those James Bonds. But I tend to be, you know, more sci-fi, like Ender's Game, and tend to be more like young adult type stuff too that I could get more drawn to because I like the, you know, Star Wars movies. So I'm going to read something that has some of that feel to it, or even the Hunger Games stuff. Like I enjoyed those books, but I'll see a movie and like, oh, that was a pretty good movie. I'll go read the book.
I'm probably like, well, I could say a snob, but let's go the other way and say I'm lazy about it. I hate something written in first person present where I pick up the axe, I throw it at Fred, which was Hunger Games written that way. I was like, oh, I hate that. It's like, that's work now. But like you, well, maybe not like you, like the reason why I don't read for recreation and pleasure is because I have to do so much of it for quote unquote work, right? So I have to read, type, edit, format. This year, whatever I said, 50. In prior years, it was 80 or 90 books by little kids, fixing their typos and stuff. Yeah, but guiding them to get the story to resolve itself and have some interesting plot points and fixing all their dialogue. But when you're doing that with 50 different stories, you kind of don't want to sit down and read for pleasure afterwards. I kind of want to be mindless. I'll put on sit on the couch, put on a old Columbo thing. So he's going to solve a mystery. But you know, it doesn't require my active engagement with my brain, much less of it, let's say. And so there's some kind of combination of that where it's like, I have to do so much of it for this task that I don't want to do it for my pleasure. Now, if I wasn't doing that at all, like when I was in college or after I was in college, when I was working all day, I was basically an auditor. I read all kinds of biographies. Real life history stuff was just super interesting to me. Presidential biographies of the rich and famous, you know, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, you name it, the Kennedys, political people. I probably for 5 years, I read nothing about biographies and I burned through them like in maybe, well, for me, burning through like 2-3 days. But I try to find classic movies that were created from a classic mystery book.
Oh yeah.
I think that's just me being lazy. I'd rather have it presented to me than read it.
Yeah.
But I know inherently it's better if I read it. It's better for me if I read it. Right. So that's the laziness factor. And that's probably why my books don't do as well as Jenifer's or Audrey's. I'm taking a shortcut there, and I probably shouldn't. That's why I'm trying to resolve it with my New Year's resolution. Read more. Well, was there so let me ask you this. We talked about some of the different people. Are you looking for new clients? Ideally, if you could have a number of clients, because let's say an author, you might say, I would love to do X number of book covers a year. That might be, let's just say it was 50 book covers a year, one a week, right? That's not going to be one author, because one author doesn't create, most authors don't create 50 books a year. How many does Audrey put out? 2, 3?
She's, yeah, right around 2.
Yeah, so somewhere around there. Jenifer, I think we all shoot for 4, between 2 and 4 is where we're going to land. So now me, I can write a book in about 2 months, but there's all the other stuff I have to do, so it limits me. I would have a goal of writing 6, and knock on wood, I would get there. I'm going to try to write 6 this year. I probably won't. So what's the ideal number of covers you would like to be working on and over the course of a year? Because you still have a regular job too, you got to do.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm somewhat flexible. Obviously Audrey's keeping me fairly busy in the day job. But right now I'm kind of just focused on, she's got author friends, kind of doing a little bit of a favor and working with them. And the few odd clients that
that's not exactly a favor. You're not doing it for free, are you?
I did do Tim's for free because that was a hit.
Well, you probably do Audrey's for free.
Oh yes, absolutely. Well, she's making me money, or she's making us money, or whatever. So
I think if you bill her,
it pays off in the end.
You should bill her because it would be a business expense, more write-off, right?
But then I got to pay taxes on it.
Oh, fair enough. Yep.
I think, I don't know. That's something that I'll ask the accountant about. There might be something there.
I'm not your auditor, so.
So,
how long does it take you to do a cover?
It really depends. Some of them, it can be done in a few minutes. Like you spend more time looking for the picture on Shutterstock or
well, that counts. So let's say Audrey comes to you with her next book, not the one you already know about, but the next one that you don't know about.
Yep.
You got a kind of a template in mind. This is going to go here. Your name's going to go there. Certain colors.
Yeah. But
you might spend a long time for that, looking for those images.
Yeah. Well, and I definitely probably spend more time on Audrey's because we're right there. We're working it, and she will.
Even if you don't, it's good that you say you do. I spend all my time on yours, honey.
Yeah, and so I'll give her lots of different variation. I totally overwhelmed her on this last one. I gave her every different combination of color that she was interested in, color on the title, color on the author name, and all these. And there was like 60 different versions of it. So I totally overwhelmed her, but it was just easy thing.
I do that. It's like
highlight
I do the covers for the young authors, right? So I just ask them, think of what kind of image would represent your story. Okay, a cardinal. Then I'll say, okay, here's a cardinal image. There's 20 different cardinals we can use. There's one thing. Then do you want your name like this? Do you want it like this? Do you want different fonts? What color? Light pink, medium purple, So I try to give them 2 or 3 choices. And then they'll tell me, oh, can we do this one with that one's font and that one's color? I'm like, yes, I'll do that for you. That'll be your cover. Then I take it to them the next week. I'm like, it's done. You thumbs up. Okay, good. You're done. You don't get to pick. Wait, no, I saw that orange, but you're done. That's it.
Yeah. And, with Audrey too, that I'll give her something. And she's like, nope, that's not quite right. I need something else. And she might not be able to pinpoint it. And so it's like, okay, I'll try this. So I give her another one. She's like, oh, that's a little better. And we'll go back and forth. And then she'll send it out, and then get input from, family and friends and readers. And then she'll come back and say, okay, this one didn't do as good. Let's do this one, but then change it to this. And so it tends to be a lot more of a process with her, and which is fine. I'm happy to do that. And that's, I guess the benefit of working together with that. I had another one where just, I think somebody contacted Audrey because she thought she was doing, wow, she's self-publishing, she's doing really good. I just want to know how she's doing this. And so she's like, oh, then she found out I did the cover. She's like, oh, could he do one of my covers? And so I did a cover for her, and she had a concept, and I found a picture, within probably 20 minutes, threw it on there, threw the title on, threw her name on there, and just kind of that standard, did a few shadowing things and kind of made it look a little bit more thrillery, and adjusted a few things, took out some stuff in the background, and within, a few hours I had it done.
Nice.
And so sometimes they
What's
go
the
really
longest
quick.
one has ever taken?
Um,
You can say the recipient because you redid it 4 times. And say
right, yeah,
that
that
was
one
2 years,
probably.
3 years on that.
Um, eh, that's a good question. I'm not sure.
Well, would it be a week, 2 weeks? Because it's not 8 hours a day for 2 weeks. It's
Right.
here and there.
Yeah. So I don't think I probably spent more than 20 hours on a cover.
That's a long time though. And probably a lot of that is researching the picture.
Yeah. Looking for pictures, looking for, if you add up all those little bits and, a revision here, revision there, I probably spent 20 hours on some of Audrey's.
That's a long time.
Yeah. But that's, not probably the norm.
Does anybody come to you and say, here's the description, here's the title, just make one for me. I got no input. I can't do any input with you.
I haven't had that happen yet.
Every author has an idea of what they want.
Yeah.
Are they usually right about what they want?
There's usually something there. And maybe it's a little scattered, or with Tim Brown, he was like, okay, I know I want this, but I'm not sure about, what can we do with that? And so, I'd send him a few different kind of concepts. And then once he's like, oh, yep, there it is. And he had one that was, I think the original cover that he had done had a skull on it. And he's like, I think we need to get rid of that. I think it's turning people off. And so, we worked on that one for a while. And, another one he had too, it was just really hard to get an image that kind of represented that book. And so that one is just like, okay, we got to find a picture, and it's been a long time finding a picture. And that was the bulk of it. Once we kind of got the picture, and, I had to do a little reworking on it, but then it was like, okay, that wasn't so bad. Another one of his, that one I talked about that has the fly fishing, the fly on it. That one was really quick. It was like, boom, we found that picture. It ended up being an artist, so we actually contacted that artist, and he bought the rights to that image. And so then I threw it on the cover, threw the title on, and then worked up. It's called The Book of Andy, and he wanted kind of a little bit of a handwritten, a little kind of sloppy for the title, and so I spent a little bit more time on that. But it was, pretty quick.
Sometimes it's because you're not as close to it as the author is. It's easier for you to pull out the main elements. Like I was saying, I would probably throw 20 things at you. And it's like 19 of those aren't important, and the one that is important isn't that important.
Yeah, but that gives you something to work with. Like, okay, there's a lot of good things there. Which one it is, and teasing it out. And maybe you try one with a few, like 3 or 4 covers, and say, okay, we'll put one on with this. We'll put, and just mock them up really quick, and then have a look at them. Maybe I'll show a concept to the author, and see what resonates with them, and then go into that fine tuning from there, and adjusting and working with the colors and the spacing and the fonts and everything. So
could you use a few more paying customers, or you pretty much?
Yeah, I'm definitely open to it. I'm not like advertising or anything really. I just kind of
word of mouth is the best advertising.
Yeah,
right? You get a couple loyal clients, they don't go anywhere.
Yeah, and so I'm happy to pick up a few more clients here and there, and we'll see what happens if this if it takes off a little bit more. But right now, focus mostly with Audrey and a few of her friends, and then the odd client that comes my way. And so I do have a website up, and I've done a few.
That's what I was just going to ask you. So if somebody's interested, where should they go to contact you?
Yeah, so when Audrey started writing, she built an LLC just for her business and everything, and she called it Ranier Publishing. And so kind of staying with that theme, my company or my design or whatever is Ranier Book Design. So it's ranierbookdesign.com.
Okay. So how do you spell that?
Like Mount Rainier. So Rainier.
I want him to get it right,
Yeah.
Rainier,
there's that there's that little I in there that I sometimes miss.
So Ranier, they go there. There's a contact me. They can shoot you an email, and
there's like a little form that they're interested in getting a cover. They can just fill it out and put as much as they want in there.
I gotta tell you, first of all, you're doing great work.
Thank you.
You probably don't need me to tell you that. Audrey's books are doing great. You've got Jenifer who saw your stuff, and she wants you to start doing stuff for her. Tim Brown, right? is happy with your stuff. And in fact, that right there tells you you're doing things right. But also the fact that when I look at those covers, since I first started seeing Audrey's covers, I was like, these look great, and so you have a great skill, and I'm glad you enjoy it. And you're in a great position where you've got a steady stream of Audrey's books to keep you busy, and
Yep.
a couple of her friends. So good for you. So listen, I learned a lot. Maybe the people watching learned a lot, but it just shows there's a lot to this. There's a lot to writing a book. There's a lot to putting out a book aside from writing it. And one of the biggest hookups, not hookups, screw ups or hang ups or glitches, is the wrong cover. The wrong cover, the book won't sell unless you're Stephen King, Lee Child, those guys. The right cover makes such a huge difference. And it's having that eye. And I said it, I don't have it. You have a great skill for that you worked on and developed. And it shows with the success of the people who their books are doing well, and also that they want you to do their covers for them. So great job. Keep up the good work. And I really enjoyed talking to you a little bit and getting to know you.
Yeah, it's good to meet you. And, I've heard quite a bit, about you and all the other author friends that met up during that marketing exercise you guys did. And so, it's good to actually meet you. And
it was a lot of neat people in there. And I don't think I regretted being in that because of all the people I got to know and learn about their books and how their writing process works and all that kind of stuff. And today we got to learn a little bit about how the book cover process goes too. So that was really great. All right, man. Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time for us today. And
thanks for having me.
Everybody, thanks again for joining us, and we'll be talking to you again real soon.
All right. Take care.